Welcome to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco, bringing you interviews with industry experts and regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land you job interviews in 60 days, guaranteed. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
Hi, I am very excited to introduce my next guest. Suzanne McColl is, to me, just an amazing example of a successful woman coming back to work after, taking some time off. That's something that a lot of women face, and she did it with just grace and to me, just very inspirational. So when Suzanne's third child was born, she stepped away from corporate America, an executive role at the Bank of America and Amex. 10 years later, she successfully returned to the job force as a management consultant. She is a senior manager with NTT Data Consulting, where she guides companies through enterprise transformation and leads multimillion-dollar enterprise programs from end to end. Today, she tackles complex training, leadership development, communications initiatives for Fortune 500, nonprofits, and financial services organizations. But I'm so excited to introduce her and hear her story. So, Suzanne, thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you, Virginia. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I did a quick bio on you before you jumped on the call, but if you wouldn't mind, give us a quick overview of your career history.
Okay, let's see. When I was a senior in high school was where it all started. I got a part-time job at a bank, and it was a small savings and loan, and I was fascinated with just the whole world of banking and financial services in general. I loved the tradition behind it and that kind of hometown banker feel that we had at that savings and loan, the relationships we forged. I loved the professional environment. Everything was really buttoned up and everybody just was at the top of their game, and it just was appealing to me. So when I went to college, I decided I was going to major in business and continued to work at that savings and loan, which eventually was acquired by Bank of America, and then continued after graduation with Bank of America, did some time over at American Express, went back to Bank of America in a variety of roles. But with both of those jobs, I was both feet in the financial services world. And at the time in my career, at that time, I thought I flourished and I really enjoyed that type of environment. And most importantly, I think, was the relationship building that occurred. Banking can be a very personal entity to people. And I think the relationship building with clients was what appealed to me most and kept me in that game.
Wow, I'm impressed. I mean, so many people in high school, they work in malls or, I was a lifeguard. So I didn't have that vision. That's just impressive.
Well, I had a youth group sponsor who worked at the bank and they needed part-time tellers. And I said, am I too young to have a job? And she said no. So that's how it all started. And I think she was a mentor too. And I really admired her and that kind of set me on the path that I owe a lot to her. So I appreciate the time.
When you stepped away after your third child was born and you were, raising him, what propelled you to return to the workforce and make a new career move?
I loved being a stay-at-home mom, and I think I used the business skills I had to do a lot of volunteer work. But at the same time, there really is something special about being in a professional environment and having something of your own and something that you can be proud of. So I knew eventually I would get back into the workforce. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something different, but I always knew that was a long-term plan, was to get back in the workforce and have something that just belonged to me.
So tell us, how did you go back? Tell me what role you went back to? Because you didn't go back to Bank of America right away, correct?
I did not. The first thing I did was I kept one foot in the business world. I was lucky enough to have quite a few friends who I'd worked with who started their own companies or had gone to smaller companies that used contractors. So over the course of the 10 years that I was a stay-at-home mom, I did small projects for all of those different former colleagues and some small companies. And, they didn't take my time full time and they weren't always lengthy. Sometimes it was 3 months or 6 months at a stint. But I felt like it was a good idea to keep my foot in the business world, keep my skills warm, be aware of all the changes that were happening in the business world and in financial services especially. So I think that's one thing that helped me when I did go back full time, is that I had that that link between the full-time work I did before and then the full-time work I went back to. It was kind of a segue, which was a good thing.
That's really smart. So you kept your industry knowledge up, you kept your skills warm, and then you're right, volunteering is a great way to, help to camouflage a gap and keep your acumen up.
Yeah. I think, too, it was important to keep my network going as well. I mean, just because I wasn't in the office every day didn't mean that I couldn't interact with all my colleagues, former colleagues. And, that's not hard. It only takes a few minutes every day to reach out to someone, see how they're doing, what they're doing. And I made a conscious effort to do that, too, and not lose those connections.
That's really smart, because networking is, they say that you will get a job 6 times faster if you use your network than if you, go the route of applying online. So to your point, it just takes a little bit of effort a couple times a week to keep those contacts up and current. So what made you, so when you went back, what role did you go into when you, decided, okay, I'm doing this full time? And what made you decide to go in the direction that you did?
Well, I mentioned that at first I loved that professional, traditional, buttoned up environment of banking. But once I got to the point where I was going to go back to work, I wanted something a little bit different. I wanted more variety. I wanted the environment to be more dynamic. I wanted it to be where it was kind of a solve the problem of the day environment. And I mentioned the friends had gone into consulting and my husband had gone into consulting. So I had a front row seat to the type of work they were doing. And it was exciting. It was different all the time. You had different clients, different types of work, always different teams. So that looked appealing to me. Yeah. I started part-time at Carlyle & Gallagher Consulting Group, where my husband worked, and I supported one of their projects as actually a project analyst. So I accepted that I wasn't going to be able to, after 10 years, go back at the same level, that I was going to have to maybe take a few steps down, learn about what had changed in the industry, and also learn a new skill. I mean, consulting is a totally different skill than working in industry. So I started out as a part-time project analyst supporting a project, and it grew from there. And I think it's important for people to realize that while there have been some people that successfully go back at the same level, there's also different routes to take. And you don't always have to, try to go for that job of parity.
But now, was that a tough pill to swallow on any level? Because the pay was different, I'm sure. And, you're working with, I know for myself, my bosses were people much younger than me. Yeah. So that was a little hard.
It was in some respects, because I felt at times that people didn't understand, or they didn't acknowledge, or they just didn't care to know where I had come from and what I had done before. So I had to kind of finesse the conversation so that they understood that I did have 20 years of experience and I wasn't coming in fresh without anything to offer. It also helped, though, that the firm that I worked for, they at the time hired consultants that had more than 10 years experience in financial services. So I wasn't sitting next to recent college grads. I was sitting next to people that were slightly younger, but a lot in my same age range. So that was helpful that I picked a firm that had that kind of hiring philosophy.
And how many years were you in the part-time or the analyst or the junior project manager role before you sort of got your footing and were sort of back on par to where you were before you left?
Well, I made the choice to stay part-time just because I wanted the flexibility for 4 years. And then once my youngest got to middle school and could be a little more self-sufficient, then I went full-time. And then from there, quickly was able to get back to the point where I left off. So it was a conscious decision. But once I was in it full-time, it just kind of took off. And it sounds like you were in charge of your career. You knew what your deal breakers were. You weren't ready to do full time because that didn't work for you or your family at that point. Yeah. And that's still important for me to communicate my deal breakers, because I still have a family at home that I want to spend time with. I still have a child that lives at home, and I don't want those jobs that are going to have me on a plane every week, all week. So I pick and choose the engagements that I'm willing to work on and those that I'm not.
Okay.
And even I don't think it's career limiting, but if it is, that's okay for me right now. But I haven't felt that way. I feel like there's a lot of work to go around, and so it's.
And I think there's a lot to be said for you owning your decisions, because to me that makes you feel like if it is career limiting, it's my choice. It's very empowering. I know. I agree. What would you say when you were, getting your feet back into the corporate waters? What was your biggest challenge? What would you say to women that are scared to go back?
I think the biggest challenge that I had was just making sure that I clearly communicated what I could bring to the table, the value I could add, but not being overbearing about it or not being arrogant about it. You have to make sure that you're finessing the conversation in a way that, people see you as adding value and not trying to assert yourself too strongly. I guess that was the biggest challenge. And, the other thing that I keep going back to is while I kept my foot in the door, because I didn't do it full time and it was just kind of sporadic, different projects I did, there was so much change that I did not really anticipate. So my advice to other people would be embrace the change. Realize that you're going to feel a little bit lost. Find somebody safe to have as a mentor or a coach where you can be honest about what's confusing, what you don't understand, ask your questions to, because the change is so rapid that it's impossible to keep up unless you're there full time. So that was surprising to me that while I had made a conscious effort to keep my foot in the door, that so much had changed regardless. And technology too.
Now, how did you find that person? Or did you have that person beforehand and you just knew them and trusted them?
I didn't have that person beforehand. Luckily, at the firm that I worked for, they assigned everybody a career coach. And so that person became my confidant because that was their role in the organization. But I would say to people who don't have that type of person, ask the recruiter that recruited you or ask your HR contact who somebody might be in the organization that you could use in that way and would be open to that.
That's really good advice. It doesn't take much for things to change. I mean, you can be gone for, 6 months and things turn around on a dime. So having that relationship, I think that's really wise. So when you were starting to go back part-time or when you went from part to full, it sounds like you didn't have a traditional job search. But how did you structure your schedule to start putting feelers out there, getting the word out so that people knew that you were ready to start working again?
Yeah, you're right. I did not have a structured job search. It was very unconventional, but I used those relationships that I talked about earlier. I just made sure that the people in my network knew that I was looking for something to do, that I wanted to do it part-time. I also knew that I wanted to do consulting. I didn't want to go back into that traditional financial services company. So I did some research on a lot of different firms and also tried to get a sense of what kind of work people do, what their day-to-day would look like. And I mentioned my husband already worked at that consulting firm, so I knew quite a few people that he worked, and I could ask them questions because they were having different experiences than he was. So when I got to the point where I made the decision, it was easy because I was able to go into the firm my husband worked at, but at the same time, I knew what I was getting into, and I knew that I was going to enjoy it.
Okay, it sounds like you organized your network, and then you did your homework too. You're doing that front-end research. Okay, and those are two things that together with having, having your LinkedIn ready to go and all of that, to me, those are the three things that your network, your homework, and your documents to be able to really hit the ground running. So all right, so now you're officially successful. You've made it. What has surprised you most along, the journey?
What has surprised me most along the journey?
Good or bad?
I think what has surprised me the most is the way that we've had to use technology to enable everything that we do. And there's so much out there that it's sometimes difficult to decide which solution is going to best fit your business. It takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of due diligence. It takes knowing what you want your end game to be. And, in my first part of my career, while technology was certainly, a foundation, it wasn't the solution for everything the way it is now. And I think that's been the most challenging and surprising, but also exciting thing. I mean, there's so many ways that we can use technology, and it really is always changing. And as a consultant, our main job is to help our clients solve business problems. So it's always exciting to research and explore all of that technology can do for them.
So does that mean have you had to become a subject matter expert on certain technologies? I mean, what skills did you have to acquire to be able to do that?
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm a subject matter expert in any technology. That's not where my mind goes.
Right.
My mind first goes to where do I need to establish a relationship and let those people be the expert. I need to go find them. I need to use my resources wisely, and then I need to let them do their thing. I need to clearly articulate the business requirements and the business problem, and then let them come back with whatever solution they have to offer. So I don't have to be the subject matter expert in their technology. I do have to be a subject matter expert in the business that I'm representing.
Okay.
And that's the
now the solution involved, and now the solution involves technology where before it didn't always used to.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
It sounds like it goes back to the relationships time, back what first got you into this when you were in high school.
It really does.
That's
It
interesting.
really does. And, if you ask a successful project manager, a successful executive, even a successful technologist, the most important skill that help them get their job done, I would hope that most of them would say the relationship building, because you can put in the best piece of technology, but if you don't have the relationship with the business that you're trying to support, it's not going to go well.
Yeah. And it's a whole lot of money to not go well. Yeah. So what advice would you give someone who either wanted to go into consulting or into financial services?
I think for both consulting and financial services, it would be for them to decide if they want to be an expert or a generalist. Financial services is such a vast world that let me just do it from the consulting perspective. If you're an expert, you're typically in a practice as part of your consulting firm where your experience and your knowledge is being used to sell work and promote the capabilities of your firm. And they typically do assessment work that leads to a recommended solution. But those people have very narrow scopes and they're myopic in how they do their job every day. And a lot of them are extremely successful. They're published. They're industry experts that speak at conferences and represent their firms. So they do have an important role to play. A generalist, though, is someone that kind of has that I can do anything mentality. They jump in regardless of the assignment and they just figure it out. They usually have a core set of skills and they apply them to any project and learn as they go to fill in the blanks. So I think it's important, whether you're going to work for one of the big banks or whether you're going to work in consulting, to decide, do I want to spend my career becoming an expert in this one area, or do I want to learn multiple areas and contribute that way? I think both can be very useful to an organization.
Do you think one will get you in the door faster than the other?
Definitely being a generalist will get you in the door faster.
Really? Okay.
I think so, from a firm perspective, yeah, because, a consulting firm is kind of like a law firm. I mean, they're all about billable hours and people billing to projects. And, if they have a project and a need and you can do almost anything, you're going to get that job faster. There are fewer experts and many more people who are generalists.
Okay. All right. Do you so when you go on a client assignment, though, do you get billed as an expert in a certain area, even though you very well might, are probably a real strong generalist?
I think at this point in my career, I tend to get assigned to engagements that are card and payments related, because that's where the lion's share of my experience is. So yes, then they can bill me at a higher rate. If they put me in lending, I'm pretty sure I could do the job, but I just wouldn't have that background knowledge and experience, and therefore my billable rate would probably be lower. But I tend to now just kind of focus on card and payments.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean I'm an expert.
No. So you knew that you wanted to go into financial services. So what if, and I'm sure you've talked to women that have done this, what if you wanted to make a jump to another industry? Is there any advice that you could give someone that, maybe wants to go do a 180 or doesn't really know where they want to go next?
Yeah, I think the first piece of advice I would give is to not be afraid to do the lower level jobs. Like I mentioned, I went back part-time. I was a project analyst. I knew I was capable of more, but a lot of times if you're willing to go in at the bottom and, kind of work your way up and show how dedicated you can be to learning whatever it is that's new, I think it can work in your favor. Also, too, I always advise other women never to underestimate the power of their personal brand and reputation. So no matter where you're coming from, you're going to have some type of personal brand and you're going to have a reputation that you've left behind and you can take into this new job, because building a brand can either make you or break you. So
that's true. It's being able to articulate that.
Definitely.
Okay. Oh, that's really good advice. And
it's not where you one day write out on a piece of paper, this is going to be my brand. I mean, you have to live it. You have to constantly hone it. It's constantly changing. You have to think about who you work with and how they view you and how you want them to view you. So definitely an evolving thing is to have a personal brand, I think.
No, I agree. But going to people that you work with and, people that that can be honest with you and say, why would you hire me? What value do I bring? Hearing back from them, I think, is a great way to start crafting that message.
And I've talked a couple times about the relationship building, and I really think that's an art. And I would encourage everybody to try to incorporate that into their personal brand, the art of the relationship. And, we get so caught up in all of our technology and, texting and emailing and communicating on social media that sometimes we forget the art of communicating face to face and the value that can bring to building relationships. So for the people that work for me that are younger and, they don't know anything different than all that technology, I really encourage them to refine that art of communication.
So just even going out for a cup of coffee, that kind of thing, that just short one-on-one FaceTime. Yeah, you're right.
I had someone instant message me this morning and said, can I run something by you? And I know that she probably would have preferred to instant message me, but I said, sure, give me a call. And I know her. She would have preferred just to hide behind the instant messaging, but I asked her to get on the phone. And I thought we had a much different conversation than we would have if we had done instant messaging. So,
you know what, that's smart. You're right. And that's just one more way to make that connection, that personal relationship.
Exactly.
Okay. So fun question. What is something that you think might surprise people about you? I always love to ask this.
Gosh, that's hard. That's hard. It's hard to surprise people. I guess that I actually have a tiny bit of musical talent.
What?
Yeah. See, you're surprised. When I was younger, I played the piano and I was in multiple musical groups, both playing the piano and singing and a variety of other things too. But as I've gotten older and had responsibilities of family and job, I haven't really had the time to spend on anything music related. So I would love to get back to that. I would love to start playing the piano again.
Oh my gosh. So you're very left brain
at church or
you're very left brain, right brain then. You've got both sides going.
I guess I'm lucky that way, right?
You do. So what is next for you? Where do you see yourself heading in these next few years?
Gosh, I would love to work for some type of a charitable organization. I feel like I could take all of my business experience and put it to good use in some way, in some type of charity. And, this goes back to what I was saying about not being afraid to kind of start at the bottom with something new. And I would love to find a charity where I could just be a tireless volunteer, learn about their mission and what they want to accomplish. And, maybe someday it might work itself into a paying job. Who knows? But I would love to do that. I would love to be able to end my day and feel like I made a difference to even one
did something
person.
For the greater good. Yeah. No, yeah. I love that. And I do think that in today's world, you can have your day job and start, what the new term is calling it a side hustle. But just if you're interested in an organization, a charitable organization, start volunteering, in your spare time and then have it sort of grow into that. So it doesn't impact what your day job is, but starts to get your foot in the door there.
Oh that's one of for the first couple months in 2018. That's a goal of mine, is to find that organization that I can, dump a lot of passion into and start working with. I don't know what it is yet, but I would love to do that. And, at the end of my day, I feel like I've accomplished things. I've been able to check boxes and cross things off my to-do list. But like you said, I don't know that I'm contributing to the greater good in the way I want to. And I really want to make an impact to people.
Oh my gosh. Well, we'll have to do a follow-up in 2 years and redo this interview and see what you're up to next.
I would love it.
That sounds great. Well, Suzanne, thank you so much. I learned a lot. You gave some really good actionable advice, and I think that I know that women that are at home and looking to jump back into the water, to know that a lot of the advice that you had, it's very sound, and it's not that it's easy to do, but it's advice that's very actionable. I'll say that word again. It's easy to break down and take small steps to really, really get started.
Yep, exactly. It's not easy to do, but it doesn't have to be hard either. So,
right.
Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me to join you today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And Merry Christmas.
Oh, thank you. You too.
Happy holidays. All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
You've been listening to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's SCIM online readers, hiring and decision makers, go to www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.